Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
Hey there, welcome back to QuickBooks Desktop 2022. My name is Cindy and we are walking through Module 3, Customizing the QuickBooks Environment. We're all the way down now to video number 4, where I want to talk to you about the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is the most important part of QuickBooks. It's very important that it's set up correctly. If it's not, then you're going to run reports and the data will not be accurate and you'll wonder why. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and we'll start talking about how that chart of accounts works. The easiest way to access the chart of accounts is from the home screen. You'll see an icon right here that says Chart of Accounts. This is a listing of all the different accounts that are in this company file. This list was created based on how you answered the questions when you set up the company file. You might look at a different company file that has some of the same accounts, but it might have some different accounts, and both are correct. Initially, you'll want to go through this list and add any accounts that you know you're going to want to use. You will want to delete ones you know you'll never use, and if you need to edit the name of some of these, you can do that as well. It's very important when you set up this list that you've got the types set up correctly over in this column. And we're going to go through each one of the types. Before we do that, I want to point out that currently the list is set up by type and the accounts are set up alphabetically. So there are two fixed asset accounts. You can see we've got accumulated depreciation and furniture and equipment there. You'll notice also that the general ledger numbers are not on automatically, and this is a preference. You do not have to use them, but if you want to, here's how you turn them on. If you go up to Edit on the menu, come down to Preferences, make sure on the left you're clicked on Accounting, and choose the Company Preferences tab. In here is a checkbox that says use account numbers. You'll want to make sure that's checked and then just click OK. And now you'll see you have general ledger numbers over on the left-hand side. These can be edited if you want to use them, but you want a different number. You could just edit these. Just right click and choose this edit option, and that will let you go in and edit any of the information that you have set up as far as this account's concerned. I want to go through the different types with you now just to make sure you've got those set up correctly. The first thing you'll notice is we don't have any bank accounts here. They're usually set up as the first type here. If I wanted to actually enter a debit card transaction, I couldn't do it because I don't have a bank account set up yet. Let's go ahead and add a bank account. You can just right click anywhere in this list to access this new option. The first thing QuickBooks will ask you is what type of account is this? This is a bank account. And notice it gives you a couple of examples of what a bank account would be. Bank accounts are any checking accounts that the company has, any savings accounts, any money market accounts. If you have PayPal, you would want to set that up as a bank account. If you have a lot of cash expenditures for your business, you would want to set one up to have a place to put those. Those are examples of bank accounts. I'm going to click Continue at the bottom. And the first thing you'll notice is that if I happen to have chosen the wrong bank account on the previous screen, I can go here and actually edit that now. The next thing you'll notice is a place to put the general ledger number. I'm just going to add one here. And then you put in the name of the account. Now you can name your accounts anything you like. I'm going to call this one checking. Often I'll see them referred to as operating account or payroll account. You might have your bank name in there. As long as you know that it's a checking account, then you're good. This is not a sub account of another one. We'll talk about that in a little while. You don't really need a description unless you want to put something in there. Someone would have to be on this exact screen to see the description, the bank account number, and the routing number. And I wouldn't put the bank account number or the routing number in here. QuickBooks does not need it. What you would need to do, though, is enter the opening balance. As of the start date of your company file, what was the balance in this checking account? I'm going to say that I had $1,500, and I'm going to put the statement ending date as January the 1st of 2022 in this case. There's also an option here that says remind me to order checks when I reach a certain check number. It will just pop up there and let you know it's time to order checks and ask you if you'd like to order them from Intuit. I'm going to hit Save and Close. And now you're going to see that we have a bank account set up called checking. If you get this message, they're asking you if you want to set up your bank feeds. We'll talk about that in a later module. For now, I'm just going to say no, and it will close that window. You'll notice now that you have a bank account and you have $1,500 in that account. Every transaction has a debit and a credit. The good thing for you is you don't have to know the flip side of the transaction because QuickBooks did that for you. Notice there's an account here called Opening Balance Equity, and it now has $1,500. That's the flip side of your transaction. Let's go ahead and set up another one. I'm going to right-click and choose New. I'm going to make this a bank account again. This will be a savings account this time. I've got bank account here. I'm going to say savings, and I'll go ahead and open that with a $5,000 balance as of the 1st of 2022. You can also click this calendar if you want to pick from this list. I'm going to click OK and then Save and Close. And now you'll notice that I have $5,000 back here in a savings account. Now notice something that happened here. You'll notice that my checking account had a general ledger number, but my savings account did not. I want to edit that. I'll just right-click on Savings and go ahead and edit that account. Notice it takes me right back to this screen, and I'll go ahead and put in $11,000 and go ahead and Save and Close. And now you'll see that I've got my checking and my savings, and they're both bank accounts with the balance in each. Notice that the Opening Balance Equity account now has $6,500. If you had a loan where you owe the money, then this would be a negative number possibly, and don't freak out when you see that because it's an accurate picture of your books. The next type of account I want to mention are your asset accounts right here. An asset is something that your company owns that makes it more valuable. You might have furniture, desk, lamps. You might have inventory in the back. Those assets can fall into one of two categories. You can have fixed assets, like you see here for furniture and fixtures, or you can have what QuickBooks calls other current. Other current assets are assets that you have right now that make the company more valuable, but your goal is to sell those and get them out the door. They're more liquid. That's an other current asset. This is the one place where your accountant's going to be very helpful because you're not really going to know what numbers to plug into your asset accounts. When you set up your asset accounts, you want to have maybe 7 to 10. You don't want to have a ton of asset accounts, and they're going to be more generic. You're going to have asset accounts like furniture and fixtures that you see here. You're going to have one that might be called vehicles. You might have one that's called equipment. Those are just big buckets that you're going to be able to plug those numbers that relate to assets into. And this is where your accountant will become very helpful because he or she will help you figure out which accounts to set up and which numbers to plug into those accounts. The next one I want to point out here is one that says Accounts Payable. Accounts Payable is an account where all of the bills you've entered will show up. If they're not paid, they'll show up in the Accounts Payable balance that you see right over here. Once you've entered a bill and you've paid that bill, it will not be part of your balance anymore. It's not considered accounts payable. You'll also have one called Accounts Receivable that will show up down here once you create your first invoice. Invoices that have not been paid will show up in the balance of the Accounts Receivable account. Once they've been paid, they will not show up in that balance anymore, and we'll see some of those as we move into one of our sample files in a later module. The next thing I want to point out are your liabilities. A liability is something that the business owes, like a loan, for example. Each loan or liability should be set up separately. In accounting, you have short-term liabilities and long-term liabilities. A short-term liability is something you're going to pay off in 12, 13 months, and a long-term liability is something that you're going to pay off long-term, maybe 5 years down the road. Let me show you how to set up a loan. I'm going to right-click and choose New. You'll notice that QuickBooks has the loan option here, and this is a short-term liability. If you're looking for the long-term liability option, they've got it listed here under other account types. I'll just choose long-term liability and click continue. The first thing I'll want to do is make sure I have the name of my account set up. And again, you can name these anything you want. I'm just going to say car loan. It's not a sub-account of another. If I want a description, I could add one, maybe the make and model of the car. If I want to add the account number, I could, but QuickBooks doesn't need it. I do need an opening balance, however. As of the start date of my company file, how much did I owe on that loan? Let's just say it was $12,000, and that would be as of the 1st of this year. And I'm going to click OK and then save and close. Now you'll see that I've got my long-term liability, my car loan, and I owe $12,000 on that loan. Now you'll notice again, I don't have a general ledger number, so I'm just going to edit that. I'm going to right click and choose edit and put in a general ledger number. Now I can click save and close, and you'll see there it is. And again, I owe $12,000 on that loan. Now something super important to know. When you make a payment on the vehicle, always, always, always the principal amount goes back to this account. You should not set up a car loan as an expense in this list. It's not an expense to the business, it is a liability. You'll notice also that the opening balance equity now has a negative number, like I mentioned earlier. That's because you owe more than the actual equity in the business right now. That's an actual accurate picture of what your books look like. You can't change that. You want to go through and set up each loan separately so that you can track the balance you owe at any given time. Let's go over to video number 5, working with the chart of accounts, part 2. Hey there, welcome back. It's Cindy again. We're still working in QuickBooks. We're in Desktop 2022. We're going to go ahead and finish talking about the chart of accounts. This is video number 5 in Module 3, where we're customizing the QuickBooks environment. We're back in the chart of accounts here. When we left off in part 1, we had just set up a long-term liability. We had set up a car payment. Remember, a long-term liability is something you owe and you're going to pay on it long-term. The other type of liability is a short-term or other current, as QuickBooks calls them. And you'll see an example of one right here, sales tax payable. When you collect sales tax, you are actually going to have to forward that money to the appropriate entity. Typically that's done once a month. It could be more, but it's on a short-term basis, and that's why those are set up as other current liabilities. If you do collect sales tax, you won't have to set this account up because QuickBooks will set it up for you automatically. And the balance that you see here will be the balance that is accumulated from all the invoices you've created, and you haven't forwarded those sales tax payments yet. Let's talk about equity accounts. You'll see there are a few here already set up. Here's your opening balance equity we've mentioned a few times, but a really popular one that you'll want to think about is owner equity. Think about the word equity meaning equal. If you own the company and you decide to take $100 out, that would be an owner draw or owner equity as it's called. If you decide to put that same $100 into the business, that's called an owner contribution. If you're not incorporated, the way you would pay yourself as a small business owner is by taking draws. Once you incorporate yourself, you want to think about setting up actual payroll where you're deducting taxes. But I want to go ahead and set one up for you just to show you how you would set up an equity account. And also, this will show you how to set up sub-accounts. We're going to set up one for the owner draws and one for the owner contributions. The first thing you want to do is right-click and choose New. And you'll want to set up an equity account for the main account, which we're going to call Owner. All you have to do is put in the account name. You really don't need any of this other information right now. There's probably not going to be an opening balance. Instead of me saving and closing and then having to create another one, I'm going to choose Save and New. You can see this took me to a blank screen. It already has equity filled in up here. Now what I'm going to do is create an account for owner draws. I'm just going to call this one draws, but notice it will be a sub-account of, in this case, owner. And I'm going to save a new and create one more. I'm going to create the contributions account. Remember, this is when you put money into the business as a small business owner. And this will be a sub-account again of owner. Now I'm going to save and close, and you can see all three of these are right here. And you'll notice how contributions and draws look like they're indented underneath owner. That's because they're sub-accounts. QuickBooks will let you have as many levels as you need. Typically, if you need more than 3, you're going to get yourself confused. So stay with 2 or 3 and you'll be fine. You'll sometimes see other terminology for these. Sometimes you will see the contributions referred to as shareholder equity. There's many different terms that you might see for that. So just set that up however you'd like to see it on reports. The next type I want to talk to you about are your income accounts. When you actually make a sale in your business, that's considered income. You can have just one income account if you like, or you can have multiple. The next one I want to talk about is a cost of goods sold type. Anytime that you have to spend money to buy a product or buy a service to make a product or service for your business, that's considered a cost of goods sold. Some examples would be if you buy a lot of materials for your job. You might have one called job materials set up. If you use subcontractors, you might have one set up for subcontractors. Let's set up a couple of these so that you can see how this works. I'm going to right click and choose new. You're going to have to go to where it says other account types and drop the list down. And from here, I'm going to choose cost of goods sold. Then I'm going to hit continue. And I'm just going to call this one job materials. And this would be any time that you have to buy any type of material at all to create that product or service for your business. I'm going to hit save and close, and you can see now it says job materials. If I wanted to go back and add a general ledger number, I could do that. I could just right click and edit. And I'm going to save and close, and now you can see it has a general ledger number. Let's talk a little bit about setting up one for subcontractors. If you have a lot of subcontractors you deal with, go ahead and set up the main account called subcontractors, and then the sub-accounts can be the different types if you want to break it down that way. I'm going to go ahead and right click here. I'm going to go back to the other account types and choose cost of goods sold and hit continue. I'll call this one subcontractors. And then I'll go ahead and click save and close, and you can see it's on the list here now. Now let me go ahead and edit that one and give it a general ledger number, and then we'll add some sub-accounts below that. Now let's go ahead and add a couple of sub-accounts. I'm going to right click and choose new. I'm going to choose cost of goods sold. I want to call this first one HVAC, and we're going to say it's a sub-account of, and in this case it's going to be subcontractors. Now I'm going to hit save and close, and you can see how it shows up underneath subcontractors. I don't have a general ledger number again, so I'm going to right click and add one here. And then I'm going to save and close, and you can see that it's indented underneath subcontractors, indicating that it is a sub-account. The next type you're going to see are your expenses down here at the bottom, and you can see there are quite a few expenses here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and let's go ahead and move over to part 3, and we will continue setting up your chart of accounts. Hey, it's Cindy again. Welcome back to QuickBooks Desktop 2022. We've been working in Module 3 where we're talking about customizing the QuickBooks environment. This is going to be part 3 of working with the chart of accounts. You want to make sure you watch part 1 and 2, and then you can go on and watch part 3 to make sure you have a full understanding of how to set up this entire chart of accounts. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and we'll keep going with the chart of accounts. We're back in the chart of accounts now, and I want to take a look at your expense accounts here. You're going to add quite a few expense accounts to this list. You'll probably also add quite a few sub-accounts. Let's just look at a few of these just so you get an idea of what types of accounts are here and which ones you might want to add. The first one you'll see here is advertising and promotion. This is typically where you're going to add any advertising that you do, whether it's social media advertising, whether you do print, maybe you do some TV advertising. And if you want to have sub-accounts below to break that out, you could do that. I wanted to point out automobile expense. Right now, you could dump your gas in here. You might actually add any repairs and maintenance to your vehicles. But if you wanted to run a report on gas, you wouldn't be able to do that because you have it all in one account. Let me just add a couple of sub-accounts here just again to refresh your memory on how to do this. I'm going to right-click on automobile expense and I'm going to add a new account. When you add a sub-account, it has to be the same type as the main account, so this will be an expense. I'll hit continue. And I'll just call this one gas. You want to make sure that it is a sub-account of, in this case, automobile expense. If you want to add your general ledger number, make sure you do that here. And then go ahead and save and close. And now you'll see gas is a sub-account under automobile expense. Next, you'll see bank service charges. Typically, this is where you're going to put your $14 a month to have the account. You're going to put NSF fees. Maybe you wire some money, you have a fee for that. You might also put your PayPal charges in here. Looking down this list, you've got your business licenses and permits, charitable contributions, computer and internet expense. This is where you're going to put your monthly cable bill for the internet, or if you have to have the computer fixed, you might put that expense here. Let's say that you don't use continuing education. All you have to do is right-click on that account and just delete it. If you've used this account before, it will not let you delete it, and it will give you a message telling you that. If you see this one that says, "Are you sure you want to delete?" that means you've never used it, and you can click OK and go on. Here's insurance expense. Some people put their automobile insurance under this one. Some people put it back under automobile expense. It's not wrong either way. It's just how would you like to see it when you run a report. Looking down this list, you'll see interest expense. There are two that you'll want to add underneath this one. You'll want to add loan interest and credit card finance charges. Let me just add those two so that you can see these here. I'll just right-click in New. This will be an expense. I'll hit Continue. And the first one I'll add is finance charges. And this is going to be finance charges related to credit cards typically. I'll go ahead and make that a sub-account of interest expense. And I'm going to add the other one here, so I'll say Save and New. And this one here will say loan interest. Any loan interest will go to this account. Now I'm going to hit Save and Close, and you'll see I've added those there, and you can go back and add a general ledger number if you want. I want to talk to you next about payroll expenses. Quite often, I will see that businesses actually outsource their payroll. Usually when that happens, you're going to want to add 3 accounts as sub-accounts underneath payroll expenses. You're going to add one for the admin fee. You're going to add one for the total of the net checks and another for the total of the net taxes. You'll see postage and delivery and then professional fees. Typically under professional fees, you'll see one for the accountant and you'll see another sub-account for attorney's fees. Looking down this list, I want to point out that there is utilities here and telephone expenses right above it here. If you wanted to move telephone expense under utilities, all you have to do is right-click on telephone expenses, edit that account, and make it a sub-account of utilities. You'll also see one at the bottom that says Ask My Accountant. If you ever have a situation where you don't know where to put one of the lines on the transaction you're entering, then you can go ahead and add it to this Ask My Accountant, and later you can go back and move it. This gives you a really good idea of how to set up this chart of accounts. Remember, it's super important that it's set up correctly from the beginning, because if you don't have the correct type, then what will happen is you'll run reports and they will not be accurate. Let's go ahead now, move over to video number 7, and we're going to talk real quick about some of the different sample files that are in QuickBooks.
This video is part of our full QuickBooks 2022 course. To take a look at the course, click over there. If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. And to see more QuickBooks 2022 videos, click over there.